Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, dear listener. There are moments in life where every direction feels closed. No matter where you turn, there is no clear way out, no solution, no plan that seems possible, just pressure building from every side until it feels like everything is about to collapse. Now imagine this: you are standing in the open desert. In front of you, a vast sea stretches endlessly. No bridge, no boat, no path forward, just water, deep and impossible to cross. Behind you, an army, not just any army, but one filled with might, with anger, with a clear intention to destroy you. The sound of their approach growing louder with every moment. The ground shook beneath their movement, the certainty that they are getting closer. Now pause and truly feel that situation. There is no escape forward, there is no escape backward, and there is no time left. This is exactly where Prophet Musa, alayhi salam, and Bani Israel found themselves, not in a comfortable position, not in a place where options could be considered calmly, but in a moment where everything pointed to one conclusion: this is the end. Now think about the journey that led to this point. They had already left behind oppression. They had walked away from years of injustice under Pharaoh. They had followed Musa, alayhi salam, with hope, believing that this path would lead them to safety, to freedom, to something better. But now, standing at the edge of the sea, that hope was being tested in a way they could not have imagined, because this did not look like safety. This did not look like escape. This looked like a trap. Now reflect on how quickly perception can change. One moment you feel like you are moving towards something good. The next moment, everything around you makes it seem like you have made a mistake, like the path you trusted has led you into a situation worse than where you started. This is the kind of moment that shakes people, because when you see no way out, your mind begins to search desperately for one, and when it cannot find it, fear takes over. Now imagine the people standing there, looking at the sea, looking back at the army, feeling the distance closing, hearing the sounds getting louder, and realizing that there is no visible escape. This is not just fear. This is the kind of fear that makes your heart race, your thoughts scatter, and your hope begin to fade, because from every angle, the situation is clear. There is no solution. Now pause here, because this is the exact moment where most people break, not because they are weak, but because the situation feels impossible. Because everything they can see tells them the same thing: you are trapped. And this is where the contrast begins. Because while everyone else is looking at what is in front of them, there is one person who sees something different. Not with his eyes, but with certainty. Now think about how difficult that is, to stand in a situation where everything looks impossible, where everyone around you is losing hope, where fear is spreading, and still remain steady. Still hold on to something that cannot be seen. This is where the story becomes more than just an event. It becomes a lesson, because every person will face moments like this. Not the same situation, but the same feeling. Moments where you feel trapped. Moments where every option seems closed. Moments where what you expected to bring ease instead brings pressure. And in those moments, the question becomes the same: what do you hold on to when everything else is gone? Because standing at the edge of that sea, with the army behind them, this was not just a physical situation, it was a test of belief. A moment where what you see and what you believe do not match. Because what they saw was no escape. But what Musa, alayhi salam, held on to was something else entirely. And what happened next would prove that when everything seems impossible, the solution does not come from where you expect it. It comes from where you cannot see. The distance was closing. What once felt far was now visible. The army of Pharaoh was no longer just a threat in the distance. It was real, approaching, undeniable. The sound of hooves, the movement of soldiers, the might behind them. It was all coming closer with every passing moment, and in front of them nothing had changed. The sea was still there, unmoving, unbreakable. Now pause and imagine that pressure building. Behind you, danger is approaching fast. In front of you, there is no path. And around you, people are beginning to react. Not calmly, not with patience, but with fear. This is where everything shifts, because fear spreads quickly. One person feels it, then another. And soon it becomes something that fills the entire space. The atmosphere changes. The atmosphere becomes heavy. People begin to speak, and their words reflect what they feel inside. And then it is said, "We are overtaken." Now stop there, because this is not just a statement, it is a conclusion, not maybe, not we might be, but certainty. We are overtaken. Now reflect on what that means. It means the situation has already been decided in their minds. The outcome is clear. There is no escape, no hope, no possibility of anything changing. This is what fear does when it is not controlled. It takes what you see and turns it into certainty, even when the full reality is not known. It closes every door in your mind before the situation has even fully unfolded. Now think about the people standing there. They had followed Musa, alayhi salam. They had left behind oppression. They had trusted the path they were on. But now, in this moment, that trust was being tested in a way they were not prepared for. Because it is easy to trust when things make sense. It is easy to believe when the path looks clear. But what happens when everything looks wrong? This is where many people struggle. Because belief is not just about what you say, it is about what you hold on to when everything around you suggests the opposite. Now reflect on their reaction. They were not lying. From their perspective, what they said made sense. Army behind, sea in front, no visible escape. We are overtaken. This is logical, this is human, this is exactly how most people would respond in that situation. And this is what makes this moment so real, because it shows you that fear is not always irrational. Sometimes it is based on what you can see. But the problem is, what you see is not always the full picture. Now bring this back to your own life. How many times have you faced a situation where everything looked impossible, where every visible path was closed, where you reached a point and thought, this is it, there is no way out? And in that moment, you made the same conclusion. Not maybe, not possibly, but certainly. This will not work. This cannot change. There is no solution. This is exactly what was happening here, and this is where the contrast becomes powerful. Because while the people were overwhelmed by what they saw, Musa, alayhi salam, was not. Now pause and think about that. Same situation, same environment, same reality in front of them, but completely different responses. One side sees the end, the other sees something else entirely. This is where the difference lies. Not in the situation, but in the perspective, because fear makes you focus only on what is visible. Certainty makes you trust what is beyond what you can see. And this is exactly what is about to happen, because in the middle of that fear, in the middle of that chaos, in the middle of people losing hope, a statement is about to be made, a statement that does not match the situation at all. A statement that seems impossible when you look at what is in front of you, but a statement that carries a level of certainty that changes everything. Because while everyone else said, "We are overtaken," Musa, alayhi salam, responded with something completely different. In the middle of chaos, there is always a moment that defines everything. A moment where fear reaches its peak, where people have already accepted the worst outcome, where the situation from every visible angle looks completely impossible. This was that moment. The people had spoken. We are overtaken. The conclusion had been made. The fear had settled. The outcome in their minds was already decided. But then came a response that did not match the situation at all. Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me. Now pause, because this is not just a statement. This is certainty. No hesitation. Not maybe. Not I hope. Certainty. Now reflect on how powerful that is. Everything in front of him said the opposite. Sea with no path, army closing in, no visible escape. And yet his response was not based on what he saw. It was based on what he knew. Now think about the difference between those two things, what you see and what you know. Because what you see is limited. It is shaped by your perspective, your position, your understanding of the moment. It only shows you what is in front of you, not what is beyond it. But what you know, when it is rooted in certainty, goes beyond that. And this is where true strength appears, not when the path is clear, but when the path is not visible at all. Now reflect on the words again. My Lord is with me. This is not just belief. This is awareness. Awareness that no matter what the situation looks like, Allah is present, not distant, not unaware, but fully in control of everything that is happening. Now pause and think about how difficult it is to hold on to that in a moment like this, when everything around you is screaming the opposite, when people are panicking, when fear is spreading and the situation looks completely closed. And yet to stand there and say with certainty, my Lord is with me. This is not something that comes from emotion. This comes from deep trust. Now look at the second part. He will guide me. Not he might, not I hope he does. He will. Now reflect on that level of certainty, because this is where everything changes. The situation has not changed yet. The sea is still there, the army is still approaching. Nothing visible has shifted, but internally everything is different. Because while others are reacting to the situation, Musa, alayhi salam, is anchored in something beyond it. Now think about your own life. How often do you wait for the situation to change before you feel calm? How often do you need to see a solution before you believe there is one? This is how most people operate. They believe after they see, but this moment teaches you something different. That sometimes you have to believe before you see. Now pause and reflect on that deeply. Because this is the difference between fear and certainty. Fear looks at what is visible and accepts it as final. Certainty looks beyond what is visible and trusts that there is something more. And this is exactly what was happening. The people saw a dead end. Musa, alayhi salam, saw a situation that had not yet unfolded completely. Now imagine standing there, hearing people say there is no escape, feeling the pressure of the moment, and yet holding on to a truth that cannot be seen yet. This is not easy. This is not something that comes naturally to most people, but this is what makes it powerful. Because this statement did not just express belief, it changed the direction of the moment. Now everything is about to shift, not because the people found a solution, not because they created a path, but because the one Musa, alayhi salam, was about to act. And when that happens, the solution does not come from where you expect it. It comes in a way that no one could have imagined, because the sea looked like a barrier, was about to become the path. The statement had been made. Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me. But the situation had not changed yet. The sea was still in front of them. The army was still behind them. From every visible angle, nothing was different. And this is where the moment becomes even more intense, because there is always a gap between belief and seeing the result. Now pause and reflect on that. It is easy to say you trust Allah when the solution is already visible. But what about that space where nothing has changed yet, where you have certainty, but you still cannot see how things will work out? This is that moment. And then the command came. Strike the sea. Now stop and think about that. not run, not find another path, not wait, strike the sea. At first it does not make sense, because when you are standing in front of an ocean, the last thing you expect is that striking it will create a path. But this is where the difference lies. Human logic looks at the situation and sees limits. Divine command goes beyond those limits completely. Now imagine the moment. Musa alayhi salam raises his staff. The people are watching. The army is still approaching. The pressure has not disappeared. And then the staff touches the sea. And what happens next is something no one could have imagined. The water begins to move, not slightly, not in a way that could be explained, but in a way that completely changes the reality of the moment. The sea splits. Now pause and truly visualize that. Walls of water rising on both sides, a clear path forming where there was none, the impossible becoming real. This is not just a miracle. This is a complete reversal of reality. The same sea that looked like a barrier, something that guaranteed there was no escape, is now the very path that will lead them to safety. Now reflect on how powerful that is, because moments before, the conclusion was clear. We are overtaken. There is no way forward. But now, the way forward is not only visible, it is undeniable. And this is the lesson that changes everything, that what you see as a dead end is not always the end, because your vision is limited, but Allah's control is not. Now think about the timing. The sea did not split early. It did not open before the pressure built. It did not create a path when things were easy. It split at the exact moment when there was no other option left. Now reflect on that deeply, because this is how things often work. The solution does not come when you expect it. It comes when you realize that there is no solution except Allah, and that is when everything changes. Now imagine the people. Moments ago, they were filled with fear, convinced that there was no escape, and now they are standing in front of something that completely contradicts what they believed, a path where there was none. A way out where it seemed impossible. Now think about the emotional shift, from panic to disbelief to realization that what they saw was never the full story. And this is where the deeper understanding begins, because the miracle itself is powerful, but what it represents is even more powerful, that when Allah opens a way, it does not come from where you expect. It comes from where you thought there was no possibility at all. Now bring this back to your own life. How many times have you stood in front of a sea, a situation that felt impossible, a problem that had no clear solution, a moment where every direction felt closed? And in that moment, you reached the same conclusion. There is no way out. But this story teaches you something different, that your conclusion is not final, because what you see is not the limit of what can happen. And just like that sea, your situation can change in a way you never expected, but only when you reach that point of complete reliance. Now the path was open, but the story was not over yet, because what was about to happen next would show something even deeper, that the same path that becomes a means of salvation for some can become a means of destruction for others. The path was open. What once seemed impossible was now real. The sea had split, and Bani Israel began to move forward, stepping onto a path that only moments ago did not exist. Now imagine that scene. Walls of water on both sides, a path clear beneath their feet. The same people who were moments ago convinced that they were finished are now walking through what can only be described as a miracle. But behind them, the story was not over. Pharaoh was still there. Now pause and reflect on his position. A man who believed he had absolute power, a ruler who controlled people, who oppressed without fear, who claimed authority beyond limits. Someone who saw himself as unstoppable, and now he stood at the edge of the same sea, looking at the same path. Now think about the mindset here. Most people, when they see something like this, would pause. They would question. They would recognize that what is happening is beyond normal understanding. But arrogance changes how a person sees reality, because when someone believes they are in control, they do not easily accept that they are not, even when the evidence is clear. So what did Pharaoh do? He followed. Now pause, because this is where the contrast becomes even more powerful. The same path, one group walks through it as a means of salvation, another walks into it with arrogance, believing they are still in control. Now imagine the moment. Pharaoh and his army enter the sea. The walls of water are still standing. The path is still open. From the outside, it may look like they are about to succeed, like they will reach the other side, like their power is still intact. But what they do not realize is this, that this path was never theirs. It was created for a purpose, and once that purpose was fulfilled, everything would change. Now reflect on how quickly situations can shift. Moments ago, Pharaoh was the one chasing, the one with power, the one who seemed unstoppable, and now he is walking into the very place that will end everything. This is the nature of arrogance. It blinds you. It makes you believe that what you see is under your control, even when it is not. Now imagine the exact moment. Bani Israel has crossed. They are safe. They turn back. And what they see is something they could not have imagined. The same sea that opened begins to close. Now pause and feel that shift. The walls of water that stood firm began to collapse, the path that existed disappears, and the army that once felt powerful is now trapped in something they cannot escape. This is not just defeat, this is a complete reversal. Now reflect on Pharaoh in that moment, the one who claimed power, the one who oppressed, the one who believed he controlled everything, now facing a reality where he has no control at all, because when Allah decides, power means nothing. Status means nothing. Strength means nothing. Everything that seemed permanent disappears in an instant. Now think about how powerful that lesson is, because it shows you that no matter how strong something looks, no matter how dominant someone appears, it is never beyond the control of Allah. And when that control is revealed, everything changes. Now bring this back to the beginning of the story. The people said, "We are overtaken." They believed that the army behind them was the end, but what they did not see was this, that the same army they feared would be the one that disappears, and the same situation that looked like their end would become their salvation. Now reflect on your own life again. How often do you fear something, thinking it will be the end, a situation, a problem, a person? Something that feels overwhelming, something that feels too strong, too powerful to overcome. And in that moment, it feels like there is no escape. But this story shows you something different, that what you fear is not always what will defeat you, and what you think will end you may actually be the thing that reveals something greater. Because just like that sea, situations can change completely, and just like Pharaoh, what looks powerful can become nothing in an instant. Now the people were safe, the threat was gone, but the lesson was just beginning. Now step away from the scene for a moment. The sea has closed, Pharaoh is gone, Bani Israel is safe. The story feels complete, but it is not just a story. It is a message, and that message is not only about what happened then, it is about what happens to you, because you have your own sea, not water in front of you, not an army behind you, but situations that feel just as overwhelming, moments where every direction seems closed. No matter how much you think, you cannot find a solution. Now pause and reflect honestly. What is your sea? Is it something you are struggling with internally, a fear, a pressure, a situation that feels too heavy to carry? Or is it something external, a problem that does not seem to have a solution, a situation that feels stuck, a challenge that keeps growing? Whatever it is, the feeling is the same, trapped, no way forward, no way back. And in those moments, your mind begins to do exactly what Bani Israel did. You look at the situation, you analyze what you can see, and then you come to a conclusion. There is no way out. Now stop there, because this is where everything begins to change. That conclusion is not final. It is based on what you see, but what you see is not everything. Now reflect on the moment Musa, alayhi salam, spoke. Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me. Nothing had changed yet. The sea was still there. The army was still behind. And yet, he did not wait for the situation to change before he believed. He believed first. Now think about how powerful that is in your own life. Because you often do the opposite. You wait for things to improve before you feel calm. You wait for a solution before you believe there is one. You wait for clarity before you trust. But this story teaches you something different, that sometimes the shift begins inside you before it happens outside. Now pause and reflect deeply. What if your situation does not need a visible solution yet? What if what you need first is certainty? Because the sea did not split when the people panicked. It did not split when they said, "We are overtaken." It split after certainty, after trust, after complete reliance on Allah. Now think about that timing, because it changes how you understand your own struggles, the delay you are experiencing, the moment where nothing seems to change. It is not random, it is part of something, because sometimes Allah brings you to a point where you realize that there is no solution except Him, and that is the moment everything shifts. Now imagine your situation again, the problem that feels impossible, the pressure that feels overwhelming. What if that is your sea? And what if the solution is not something you can create, but something that will come when you reach that level of trust? Now reflect on this carefully. Your sea may not split the way you expect. It may not look dramatic. It may not happen instantly, but the principle remains the same. When Allah opens a way, it comes from where you did not expect, from a place you thought was impossible. Now bring everything together. The people saw the end. Musa, alayhi salam, saw a beginning. The people focused on the problem. Musa, alayhi salam, focused on Allah. And in the end, reality changed. Now the question is not about what happened then. The question is about you now. When you face your own sea, which side will you stand on? Will you look at the situation and say, "There is no way out"? Or will you hold on to something deeper, even when you cannot see it yet? Because that is where the difference lies, not in the situation, but in your response to it. And when you understand that, something changes. You stop seeing your problems as endings, and you begin to see them as moments before something shifts. Because just like that sea, your situation is not final. And when the time comes, your sea will split too.